Welcome back, heroes. In part 2 of What If Deku Dated Mirko, we're diving back into the world of unexpected romances and epic adventures. Get ready for more surprises and laughs, it's about to get even crazier. Let's jump in. Izuku left the hospital with Mirko following him. The green-haired boy had his arm bandaged, but it wasn't broken, thanks to the doctors. "You're an idiot," Mirko scolded. "I know," Izuku replied. "You hurt yourself." "It was to save the kid." "You broke your damn arm," she shouted angrily, making Izuku step back in fear. "You're lucky the doctors could heal you. What if they didn't have such good healing quirks? We would have had to go back to UA, and you couldn't continue your training." "I'm sorry, sensei." She sighed and pulled his arm, making him walk faster and wince in pain. "Whatever, let's go home. You need to rest so you can be 100% for training tomorrow." "Will we train again so soon?" "Don't cry now. You didn't when you broke your arm," she said, smiling slightly. "I have to admit, what you did, despite being stupid, was amazing, kid." Thanks, but stop calling me a kid. My name is Izuku Midoriya." "You call me short, so I'll call you a kid whenever I want," the heroine teased. Whatever," Izuku sighed. "Is the kid okay?" "The police said they would take him to his parents and provide help to control his quirk better. He'll be fine." "Thank goodness. By the way, I wanted to ask you something." She looked at him intently. "When we were there, you said you knew what it was like to feel so much pain inside without anyone helping. What did you mean by that?" Izuku sighed, knowing how persistent Rumi could be. He looked at the sky for a moment. "My quirk didn't awaken at the usual age. It's an energy accumulator. It stored energy to enhance my body. It didn't awaken because it was accumulating enough energy to significantly boost my strength. However, the doctor made a mistake in the x-rays, and I was wrongly diagnosed as quirkless." Mirko blinked. This kid had been quirkless? She didn't have anything against them but considered them weak compared to her. It surprised her that the boy she was helping was quirkless. "Due to my condition, I faced bullying in school. It got to the point where my best friend told me to commit suicide so I could be born with a quirk in the next life. People hated me to an absurd level. Even a kid with Down syndrome mocked me." "Your best friend told you to commit suicide?" she asked, angry. "Well, yeah, but I guess he didn't mean it, say." Slap. Izuku fell silent after receiving a slap from Mirko. She stood sternly in front of the stunned boy, looking at him with annoyance. "Listen, in the week I've spent with you, I've learned several things. You're clumsy, too nervous, have a strange obsession with All Might, and many other things. But I've also learned that you're a good person. There's a limit to that, though. How the hell do you still call him your best friend after he told you to commit suicide? He's the only friend I've had in my whole life. He probably didn't mean it seriously." Izuku nervously exclaimed under Rumi's irritated gaze. "Listen, I've had only one friend in my life. He was a pretty adorable and kind kid, someone I could talk to for a while and had fun with as a child. But most importantly, he would never tell me to commit suicide." She grabbed Izuku by the shoulders. "How long has it been since he told you that?" "1.5 years. Has he apologized?" Izuku thought for a moment, widening his eyes in realization. "And no. Has anything changed?" "No." "Good. The next time he talks to you, tell him to go to hell. And if he ever hits you again, hit him back hard enough to bust his lip. Got it?" Izuku said nothing. "Kid, you're a good student and a future hero, but being around people like that won't do any good for your mental health." "I understand," Izuku nodded slightly. He had a lot to think about. "Good, now move." She pulled him by the arm. "I'll give you a gift for what you did today." Izuku blinked, confused by that. Izuku had done embarrassing things in his life, from wetting the bed to what happened on March 15th, but he preferred not to talk about that day. Yet, here he was, sitting on the same couch as a pro hero, who was dressed casually. A bowl of popcorn sat between them, and Malcolm in the middle played on the TV. "Hey," she looked at him for a moment, "I noticed something strange." "What's up? Don't you like Malcolm?" "And no, it's not that," Izuku shook his head. "It's just that it's weird. Normally, you just send me to sleep while you do your paperwork. Tonight is completely paperwork free. Enjoy it," she said, watching the TV and laughing at a scene. Ha, he couldn't handle the 100 quacks. It was obvious. Nobody can eat 100 quacks. "Excuse me?" Mirko raised an eyebrow. "I could eat 100 quacks." "Nah, It's impossible. They would expand in your stomach, Izuku said while watching the TV. It bothers me that you doubt me, kid. You know what I'm capable of, she said with a smile. Yeah, I think so, he said, eating some popcorn. By the way. What? Are we really not friends? Mirko was surprised by that question. I mean, you said we're not friends, but the way you behave with me. Do you want us to be friends? She asked, losing her smile and showing a serene face. I think you've seen that I'm not the friendliest person in the world. You're not very kind, but that doesn't mean you're not nice, he said nervously. Ignoring that we didn't meet on good terms, you've been pretty good these last few days. It feels very natural the way you do it. I didn't think you were pretending or doing it just out of obligation. That's why I wanted to know if we could be friends. Rumi looked at him for a moment before raising her hand as if she was going to slap him. Izuku quickly covered himself, but Rumi didn't slap him. Instead, she smiled and gave him 2 punches on the shoulder. 2 for moving. Ouch, he let out a small grunt of pain but still smiled. Hey, eyes on the screen. We're friends, but don't get any weird ideas, she said while eating popcorn. I would never, Izuku said, turning his gaze to the screen, then looking at Rumi. By the way, how old are you? And you? She frowned, noticing the height difference again. What were you fed as a child? Izuku blinked, confused, not understanding the relevance of that question. The next day, Izuku left the guest room yawning. He was ready to shower and continue with his training. However, he noticed that instead of being dressed in her hero costume, Rumi was adjusting a black skirt. In addition to that, she wore a white blouse, long black stockings, and heels. Izuku blushed a bit at the sight. He had to admit that the rabbit woman was quite beautiful. Rumi realized that Izuku was watching her. Ah, you're awake, she said, finishing adjusting her skirt. Change of plans, we're not training today. I have to go to the police station to submit some reports. Can I come? Like a little kid, Izuku asked. I've always wanted to know what a police station looks like inside. Seeing Izuku's excitement, Rumi just sighed and nodded. Fine, but wear nice clothes. You won't go in that t-shirt you always wear. What's wrong with it? That t-shirt literally has t-shirt written on it. Need I say more? Izuku decided not to say anything and went to take a shower, although a thought crossed his mind. People don't know what good taste is. After showering, Izuku and Rumi left the brunette's apartment. They took a taxi to the station, with Izuku carrying the albino's bag while she reviewed some documents. The taxi dropped them at the entrance, Mirko paid, and both entered the police station. Izuku was amazed by what was inside, so many officers with simple yet fabulous quirks, like one who looked like a miniature Godzilla or another with demon wings. However, he couldn't look for long because Rumi pulled him into the elevator. Upon entering, the albino pressed the button for the top floor and sighed. It was 80 floors up, and it was going to take a while. Izuku was amazed by what was inside, so many officers with simple yet fabulous quirks, like one that looked like a miniature version of Godzilla or another with demon wings. However, he couldn't look for long, as Rum. By the way, what are the reports about? Izuku asked curiously. All my activities throughout the week, all the villains I captured, the number of accidents I stopped, and the ones I didn't stop, etc. It's honestly extremely tedious, but you get used to it over time. Though it never stops being boring, she said, looking at her papers. Do you find paperwork boring? Of course. It's horrible. I'm a woman of action, not a damn secretary. She grumbled, annoyed. I could help you with those papers. Mirko looked at him. I know I don't know much about it, but at least I can help you fill them out faster. I guess. She shrugged. What do you want in return? No one does favors for free. It's a way to repay the favor. I mean, you're already doing a lot for me by training me, so I could at least help you with something, Izuku said with a small smile. Rumi returned the smile. They continued talking for a few more minutes until the elevator stopped. Upon exiting, they walked a bit until they reached the police chief's office. Wait for me here, I'll deliver this key. Boom. Rumi couldn't finish her sentence because a loud explosion was heard. The albino quickly looked out the nearest window, discovering that something had exploded at the train station. Shit. Rumi grabbed Izuku's arm and quickly pulled him, taking him to the dressing rooms that the station had available for professional heroes. Your suit is in the bag, get dressed quickly. Eh? Izuku opened the bag, finding his complete hero suit. Where did you get this? The green-haired boy stopped talking when he noticed what Mirko was doing. His face turned completely red at the sight before him. What are you waiting for, kid? It's not time for hormonal thoughts, lives are at stake. Izuku reacted quickly and turned around, removing his clothes, with much embarrassment and his face completely red, and putting on his hero suit. When he turned back, Rumi was adjusting the shoes of her suit. Ready, she said, stepping on the floor to adjust her shoe. Ready to save lives, kid? Izuku said nothing, put on his mask, and ran quickly, then jumped out of the window. Rumi didn't say anything and just smiled before jumping after him. Both were jumping straight to the site of the explosion. Izuku and Rumi were jumping towards the explosion site. Both the green-haired and the albino heroes were perfectly synchronized in their jumps, expecting to reach the explosion site in less than 2 minutes. If it's a villain, you save the civilians while I stop them, Izuku declared. Understood. Rumi replied. Arriving at the explosion site, they found a destroyed train station, with one of the cars hanging by a thread. Izuku was horrified. If the car fell, it would not only kill those inside but also people below. Listen, stay calm, Rumi said, glancing at Izuku. We need to evacuate the people from the car slowly. How are we going to do that? If we enter or try to move it, it will fall, and they'll die, Izuku worriedly remarked. Don't think they'll die. Rumi asserted. Always keep your focus on the success of a rescue. If you dwell on failure, doubts will cloud your mind and hinder your performance. I understand, Izuku nodded, now much calmer. What should I do? Mirko frowned, assessing the situation. She noticed a part at the back of the car they could use as leverage. However, the train was heavy, challenging to hold, especially with gravity working against them. But Mirko had lifted heavier things before. I'll hold the car, she declared firmly. Once I do, I want you to enter the train and get people out as fast as you can. Are you sure you can hold it? Izuku asked. Trust me, kid. You trust me, and I trust you to get them out in time, Mirko reassured. Izuku smiled, and they both jumped onto the destroyed train tracks. Mirko approached the car and gripped it firmly. She grunted under its weight but stood strong, putting all her strength into the hold. Now, kid. She called. Izuku leapt into the car through a window. As he landed, he faced about 20 people, all silent and still. Are you crazy? One of them asked angrily. You could make the train fall. Don't worry, my friend is holding the train. It won't fall, Izuku tried to reassure them. I'm going to get you out of here. Really? Get me out first. No, me. I have a child at home. Don't listen to them, get me out. I have connections, I can make you rich, kid. Enough. Izuku suddenly shouted, silencing them all. I'll get all of you out, one by one. You, come here. Izuku pointed to a pregnant woman. Slowly approaching her, he extended his hand. Come, take my hand. I'm going to get you out of there. Izuku noticed her hesitation, looked at her belly, and asked, boy or girl? Twins, a boy and a girl. Wow, your husband is quite something. What's your name? Karumi. Alright, Karumi-san, my hero name is Deku. Now, come, I'm going to get you so you can have your kids, raise them, and in 15 years, aim a shotgun at anyone trying to date them. Karumi couldn't help but laugh. Despite the tension, the boy had made her feel confident. She slowly extended her hand, and Izuku helped her up. I'll be back in a second, Izuku said to the others. Jumping back out, he left the woman on the ground. Paramedics took her away, thanking Izuku repeatedly as she cried and looked back at him. But there was no time to be distracted. Izuku returned to the train and rescued another person, then another, and another. A crowd had gathered, and some journalists were recording the scene. Finally, only 3 people remained on the train, a family of 3. Izuku entered the train and, starting with a child, Rumi's shout stopped him. Hurry, kid, we have a problem. Izuku didn't understand, but looking out the window, he saw a bullet train cabin approaching at full speed. His eyes widened in horror. Izuku hurriedly took the child in one arm, the woman in the other, and the father jumped on his back. Kicking one of the doors, balance didn't matter at this point. After knocking it down, he jumped, landing far from the danger. Rumi, seeing this, released the car and got out of the way. The car fell to the ground, luckily without anyone nearby. However, the bullet train wasn't going to stop. It happened so slowly that they could hardly process it. The bullet train didn't stop and derailed, falling rapidly towards civilians watching. They closed their eyes, expecting the worst. But when they felt nothing, confusion set in. Opening their eyes, they saw a heroic sight. Izuku and Rumi had caught the bullet train's cabin between them, currently holding it above their heads. Both were breathing heavily, trying not to give in. Izuku could barely hold on using his 7%, certain that without Rumi, he would be dead for attempting this madness. "Kid!" Rumi called. "Throw it forward, there's no one nearby." Izuku nodded, throwing the cabin with Rumi. They dropped it to the ground. Izuku put his hands on his knees, taking a breath. His arms ached terribly. "They did it." The crowd cheered. "They saved us." Izuku watched as people began to applaud. He smiled a little at that, and Mirko did her best to strike a victorious pose, despite being tired. Izuku looked at her for a moment while smiling. She noticed his gaze and raised an eyebrow. "What's up? You said you didn't like working in a team," he said with a smile. "Still think that?" "Of course." Izuku rolled his eyes. However, Rumi grabbed him by the neck, leaning on him slightly to avoid neck strain. "But I guess you'll be the exception." "Ha ha. Great job, kid." "Deku. Mr. Deku." The pregnant woman Izuku saved first approached him, breaking through the crowd. "That was amazing." Thanks, he said with a small smile. "Thank you for saving me. Thanks to both of you. I'll name my children after you." Izuku and Rumi looked at each other before shrugging. They didn't mind. "Katsuki, bring me a glass of water," Mitsuki shouted in annoyance. "Go get it yourself, old hag. Bring me the damn glass, or I'll deduct your allowance." With a completely annoyed expression, Bakugo left what he was doing and brought his mother a glass of water. Mitsuki smiled upon receiving the glass. "Thanks, brat, you finally did something useful," she said, switching the channel to a news one. "Don't bother me, old hag. I have to get ready to study with my hairpin." Katsuki stopped when Mitsuki spat the water on his shirt. "Masaru, come see," Mitsuki exclaimed excitedly. "Eh?" As Katsuki turned to the television, he found the news channel, displaying an image of Deku and Mirko, the latter hanging from the green-haired hero's shoulder. Breaking news: hero number 6 Mirko and her new partner, known as Deku, averted a tragedy that could have taken the lives of 34 people. Stay tuned for footage of the incident. The footage showed Mirko holding the train while Izuku entered and exited, rescuing all the people. It then showed the moment both heroes caught the train at an incredible speed before an interview. "It really wasn't anything special, it's a hero's job to help people, he. Oh, come on, kid, don't be so modest. We saved the darn train." The anchor cut it short as Mirko uttered several profanities. The most impressive thing about this event is that Deku is an aspiring hero under Mirko's guidance. It seems the next generation of heroes will be just as good as the previous one. Stay tuned for more on this. Channel 01 out. The report ended, moving on to sports. Masaru and Mitsuki smiled at each other. "Did you see how he caught the train? That was awesome," Mitsuki exclaimed happily. "Little Mito-chan has become really strong." Yeah, we should visit him someday," Masaru stuttered. "Did you see, brat?" Mitsuki mocked Katsuki. "That's what it means to be a hero. You keep saying you'll be number one, but Mito-chan already has 1,000 years of advantage. Learn from him, ha ha ha." Katsuki didn't say anything. Images of Izuku catching the train and saving people flashed in his mind. He clenched his fists as smoke emitted from them, a considerable amount of anger reflected in his eyes. Deku. Yes. Mirko grinned as she took a sip from her 3-liter soda bottle. On the table were nachos, hot dogs, pizzas, and more junk food. Izuku smiled as he sipped from a smaller glass. After ensuring everything was in order, both returned to the station, submitted reports, and then returned to the apartment. Mirko had ordered a lot of food to celebrate what happened today. "Not bad, kid. It was really great," she said while devouring a hot dog, talking with her mouth full. "Never thought we'd catch it at the same time." "I also didn't. It was just instinctive. I felt you were going to jump, so I jumped too," Izuku explained. I felt something similar." "Well, it was probably just a reflex," she dismissed while eating. "I can't believe that girl is naming her kids after our hero names. I think she was just exaggerating." "Believe me, people like that don't exaggerate. You'd be surprised how many kids in Japan are named All Might. Poor kids, they'll get bullied a lot for that." "Damn, today was a great day," she said while devouring a burger. You know what? I have a proposal for you. A proposal? I love working with you. So, from now on, you'll do internships at UA with me. You're officially my new partner. I never said yes. But I'm not going to refuse either. Izuku smiled a bit. I promise to live up to it, Maruko-san. Bah, call me Rumi, Izuku, she said with a big smile before grabbing some chocolate sticks. Now eat heartily, I'll see if there's a good movie on Hibomax. Can I choose? Izuku asked. What do you have in mind? Looney Tunes, back in action, Izuku said. It's the best movie they have. You have good taste. I'll go put it on, Rumi declared. Izuku smiled as he watched her leave. She looked pretty cute devouring food. Companion of hero number 6, Izuku looked at the food on the table before grabbing a slice of pizza. Not bad for a first-year student. Now, kid. Got it. The villain received a double kick that sent him straight into dreamland. Izuku and Maruko landed on the ground, both smiling at the victory they had just achieved. They looked into each other's eyes, exchanged a high five, while the crowd applauded their triumph. Several days had passed since the train incident, and the talk about the new hero duo was growing. When not training, Izuku went on hero missions with Rumi. During their downtime, they enjoyed watching movies in Izuku's apartment. They even had several movie nights. Izuku's popularity soared due to his collaboration with the number 6 hero. People praised him, saying he would be a great hero in the future. He now had his own Instagram with 300k followers. Taking advantage of the moment, Izuku took a photo with Rumi next to the defeated villain. Rumi flexed her muscles and grinned, while Izuku flashed a peace sign. Hashtag Team Up Heroes. Wow. They really hit that guy hard. Deku, you're so cute. Carry me in your arms through the city. Damn, having such a sexy hero by his side all day, lucky bastard. Are we going to ignore the fact that the guy is convulsing? Yes. Izuku put away his phone. He would check his Instagram later. He took the villain by the shoulder and handed him over to the authorities. Then, he looked at Rumi, who had stopped talking to reporters to speak with him. Well done, kid. We gave him a good beating, she said, smiling. Hee, yeah, I guess, he smiled slightly. By the way, the UA exam is in 3 days. Do you think my training is ready? Ha ha ha. Kid, with everything I've taught you, you could take on your entire class and come out unscathed. There's no way you can fail that exam. She gave him a punch on the shoulder before turning around. But enough about that. Let's keep patrolling. Izuku laughed slightly with a small blush on his face. He found Rumi's excitement very endearing. He flexed his legs and took a big leap, easily following the brunette. They jumped from building to building, feeling the wind on their faces with each leap. Izuku did some parkour to pass the time while patrolling. It was great to use his quirk freely while with Rumi. The rabbit hero started to mimic him, and they both did parkour across the buildings. Until Izuku slipped and ended up falling to the ground. Thanks to One for All, he didn't break anything, but the impact did hurt a bit. Hey, Rumi stood by his side. Are you okay? Why yeah, he quickly got up. I'm fine. Izuku checked his pocket, feeling his phone and some pieces of glass? When he took out his phone to check, he realized it had broken with the fall. Oh, great, he grumbled quietly. Mom's going to kill me for this. Hey, don't worry, it's just the screen, Rumi said, looking at Izuku's phone. There's a repair shop in the mall. Let's see if they can fix it. Izuku nodded slightly and followed Rumi to the mall, jumping by her side again but being careful not to fall again. Izuku sighed as he got up again and ran towards Rumi, launching 2 kicks that she quickly blocked. His phone would take a few days to repair, but since he had an exam, he decided Rumi would pick it up and give it to him after. Izuku had no problem with that. He snapped out of his thoughts and dodged a kick from Maruko, only to receive another in the back. Move faster. Yes. Izuku got up and ran towards Mirko again, jumped, and kicked her in the face. The hero caught the kick, but Izuku used his other leg to hold her arm with both. Then he fell with his hands on the ground and used his weight to throw Rumi to the ground. However, the hero used her flexibility to stay firm with one arm and her 2 legs like an animal. She then lifted Izuku with her arm and threw him towards a tree. Izuku spun in the air and used the tree to jump back towards Rumi, attempting to punch her. The albino spun, allowing Izuku to pass, but the boy landed with his hands on the ground and propelled himself to jump again towards the albino. Punches and kicks exchanged between them until Izuku couldn't continue the fight and decided to stop, falling to the ground while breathing heavily. "Not bad, kid. You made me sweat a bit today," she said, wiping her face with a cloth to clean her sweat. "Yay," said Izuku half-heartedly, he was definitely very tired. "Feeling okay?" "We've had a tough week, that's all," said Izuku tiredly. "And I'm on the edge of my exams. I want to rest a bit before the big day." "You had a tough week?" Rumi asked before sitting on her knees beside him. "Well." Izuku felt confused until he saw her pat her lap. Izuku blinked as his face turned red. "I guess I can lend you my lap." "Ah," he blushed quite a bit. "The lap of the number 6 hero? What kind of god bestowed him with this gift? Are you sure?" "Ha ha, don't get any weird ideas, kid. I'm just giving you a gift." She smiled slightly. "Now come." Izuku thought for a moment before approaching and resting his head on Miruko's lap. Izuku felt quite comfortable. Despite her muscular legs, her thighs were quite soft, like two very comfortable pillows. The boy smiled and settled in while Rumi crossed her arms. "Don't enjoy it too much, pervert." But you were the one who told me to do it." "But I didn't tell you to enjoy it." Izuku felt Rumi move, and now, his head was being squeezed between her two thighs. "And I didn't say we were done training." "You fell into my trap," she said with her classic mocking smile, only this time she was sticking out her tongue. "And I didn't say we were done training." "You fell into my trap," she said with her classic mocking smile, only this time she was sticking out her tongue. The green-haired boy tried to free himself, but the strength of the thighs choking him was too much to try to get his head out, so he had to try something else. Izuku placed his feet on the ground and lifted the upper half of his body, doing a sit-up. The force he used was enough to lift Rumi with him. Once he was up, he slowly stood up from the ground. Rumi increased the force in her thighs to make Izuku yield, but the green-haired boy didn't give in. Instead, he started to spin forcefully. Rumi tried to hold on but couldn't do it in time. And finally, she went flying. Izuku rubbed his neck while Rumi spun in the air and landed on her feet. She grinned wildly as she looked at the green-haired boy. Izuku smiled in the same way and activated One for All. Both ran towards each other ready to attack. Rumi entered her apartment, making sure Izuku didn't hit the door. She was carrying the unconscious boy on her back after their training session. The brunette left the boy on his bed and covered him with a blanket. She smiled a bit as she watched her friend sleeping peacefully, so she lightly tapped his forehead with her fist, not enough to wake him up. "Rest, kid. You did well." Rumi left the room and went to take a bath, feeling quite tired from all the action today. She would handle the paperwork tomorrow. Finally, the day to say goodbye had arrived. Izuku stood at the train station, and Rumi was in front of him, dressed like an ordinary civilian. She smiled as she watched the boy fix his UA uniform. Izuku wasn't even going to stop at his house to greet his mother. No, he would go directly to UA to take his midterm final exam, and then he would return home with victory in his hands. The boy was filled with confidence, firmly believing he would succeed, and nothing would stop him. "Wow, you've really changed a lot since you arrived," she smiled. "I'm proud of myself, I'm an excellent teacher." "Ha ha ha." "Of course, you are." Izuku gave her a huge smile and then bowed. "Thank you so much for everything, Rumi-san." "I'm not done yet, kid." Rumi reached into her bag and pulled out something wrapped in gift paper. "This is my last gift to you for now." "What is it?" "Open it when you're in the school changing rooms and have to wear your hero costume. Trust me, it's a good surprise." Izuku smiled and packed the costume in his suitcase. Then, he looked at Rumi for a moment. And gave her a tight hug. "Really, I can't thank you enough for this. You've helped me a lot." "Hey, don't get all mushy, I hate sentimental stuff." She smiled and patted him on the back, then took him by the shoulders to make him look her in the eyes. "Now go and show everyone who's in charge." Izuku smiled, and then his train arrived. He waved goodbye to Rumi and entered the train, heading straight to UA. Finally, Izuku arrived in front of the academy. He smiled at it. It had been 2 weeks since the last time he saw it. Izuku entered the academy and started walking to his classroom, moving calmly among the other students walking around. But the calmness didn't last long. "Hey!" Many turned when someone shouted. Izuku did too and was surprised to see Monoma from Class B calling him. Hello? You're the idiot from Class A. Who worked with Hero Mirko. How did you manage that? Someone so pathetic would never be with a top hero unless they were family." Quickly, Students crowded around Izuku, they all bombarded him with questions at high speed. However, Izuku didn't want to waste more time, so he simply pushed through them with some force and agility, then ran towards his classroom. Finally, Izuku reached the door of Class 1A. He was 3 minutes late. When he knocked on the door, he waited for a few seconds, and then Aizawa opened it. Upon seeing his troublesome student, Aizawa sighed and rubbed his temples with annoyance. "You're lucky I don't want to deal with Mirko. Come in and sit down to take your written exam." Izuku obeyed and entered the classroom. However, instead of being greeted by the silence of his focused classmates, as soon as Uraka saw that he was the one entering, she quickly stood up from her seat. "Deku-kun, you're back." When the brunette said that, almost the entire Class 1A stood up from their seats and surrounded the green-haired boy, who felt somewhat nervous at receiving so much attention. "Man, we thought you were already going to become a pro hero. How did you manage to make Mirko your partner? She always worked alone. What was it like working with Mirko, Midoriya-san? The way you caught the train was very manly, bro. Did you see her? Did you touch her? How did it feel?" Mineta was silenced by a hit from Tsuyu. Aizawa acted quickly and made everyone sit down. Izuku went to his seat, which was behind Bakugo, who was glaring at him with great anger and clear hatred. "Don't think just because you were with a pro, you're better than me, you damn useless," Bakugo spat. Izuku didn't flinch at Bakugo's words. Instead, he grabbed his shoulder and whispered something in his ear. "Do the world a favor and stop screaming like a dog for a second. I have an exam to do." "What the hell did you call me?" "Bakugo," Aizawa reprimanded. "Silence. We're in an exam." The blonde only growled at the green-haired guy. Izuku ignored the growl and started working on his written exam. Izuku hadn't studied much, most of his time was spent training with Rumi. However, he wasn't foolish, so he could answer everything relatively easily. At least he was sure he would get an 8 or a 9 on his exam. Once the written exam ended, everyone was sent to the changing rooms to put on their hero costumes. Izuku was taking off his clothes when he was surrounded by Denki and Mineta. "Come on, Midoriya. Confess." "What?" Izuku raised an eyebrow in confusion. "What did you do with the number 6 hero for 2 weeks?" Denki asked. "Training, patrolling, beating villains, saving people, filing reports, and watching movies at night occasionally." "Why?" "Damn Midoriya. You have a sexy heroine watching movies with you," Mineta shouted while shaking Izuku. "What's your secret?" "Stop being so immature. I went with her just to train." Izuku pushed Mineta away. "Get dressed, we have an exam to take." "What kind of training did you do?" Todoroki asked curiously. "She taught me to fight." "Weren't you fighting before?" Kirishima asked. "Throwing punches wildly doesn't count as fighting." Crap, the redhead blinked, realizing he did the same. "And how did you become her partner?" Todoroki asked. "Don't start, Todoroki," Izuku rolled his eyes. "We just saved a train together, and from there, she named me her partner. Stop thinking that everyone I associate with is my relative. I don't do that. Before internships, you thought Setsuna from Class B was my cousin just because our hair is green." Todoroki didn't respond. "The way you saved the train was brilliant, Monsieur Midoriya," Aoyama said, smiling. "You both looked elegant, although the lady's vocabulary wasn't the most appropriate." "Ha ha, don't let her hear you say that. One of the reporters tried to scold her, and she broke his camera. Can you stop talking for a damn second?" Fed up with hearing Deku's exploits, Bakugo grunted irritably. "Stop boasting like you're the 8th wonder of the world. Despite all you did, you're still below me, Deku." "Bakugo," Izuku stared at him for a moment. "If you're not going to say anything interesting, shut up and get lost, because the last thing I need to hear today is your annoying voice." "Who do you think you are to tell me to shut up?" "Someone who can break your legs for good." "Enough, guys. Ida stopped them both. It's not time to fight. We need to focus on the exam." Izuku simply ignored Bakugo and took out the gift Mirko gave him. Upon opening it, he was surprised by the contents, and he found a note with something written on it. "This is much better than the other one. It's made of better quality and won't break so easily. Enjoy it, kid." Izuku smiled when he read that. Finally, the physical test and the last phase of the final exam were about to begin. Uraka was looking for her friends, but when she saw them, she was surprised by the change in the green-haired guy's outfit. "Wow, Deku-kun. Your costume looks amazing." Izuku smiled as he adjusted the glove in front of his friends. Izuku stood with his classmates, noticing many teachers present. The green-haired boy was confused. Why were there so many teachers? There were like 8 or 9. The practical test is about to begin, said Aizawa, bored. Obviously, you can also fail this test, which is worth 50% of your grade. So, if you want to go to the camp, it's best not to make a fool of yourselves. At this point, Izuku didn't care about the camp. Even if he failed the exam, he would still go. What motivated him to win was the feeling of victory and knowing that all his training was not in vain. Why are there so many teachers? Jiru asked. I don't doubt that they studied and learned a lot before the test. Aizawa glanced at Izuku. So I guess they know what's coming. An exam with robots, just like the entrance exam? Mina exclaimed. Against our teachers? Uraka exclaimed in shock. Now, your pairings and opponents have been decided, Nezu declared. Based on your grades, personality, and familiarity, we've made the pairings. First, Todoroki and Yayorozu against me, Aizawa announced seriously. And Midoriya, you'll be with Bakugo as a team. These words were like a bucket of cold water for Izuku. He looked at Bakugo, who was also stunned by the news. As for who will be your opponent, All Might shouted, it will be me. All Might descended, landing in front of Izuku and Bakugo. Their classmates mentally gave their condolences, they couldn't help but feel sorry for them. It was impossible to beat All Might, but they were also happy they didn't have to face him. Bakugo clenched his fists nervously. He was nervous. Why was he nervous? He was going to be number 1. To crush All Might. Bakugo looked to the side, hoping to see Deku nervous, that would at least lift his spirits. However, Izuku wasn't nervous or didn't seem to be. On the contrary, he was smiling. Damn bastard was smiling with excitement. Izuku looked up at All Might intently. All Might was surprised by his student's gaze. It wasn't his usual look. It was a much fiercer and battle-hungry gaze, a smile that someone calling themselves the symbol of peace would never have. Nezu recognized that smile perfectly, and a shiver ran down his spine. It wasn't exactly the same, but it was too similar to be a coincidence. What did I do? Izuku exclaimed. I will give everything to beat you, All Might Sensei. The 10 teams will start in their respective scenarios simultaneously, Aizawa said, ignoring Izuku's audacity. The main idea of the test will be explained by the teacher you're facing. Transported by the campus buses, your time is precious, so don't take too long to leave, Aizawa added. Izuku nodded and quickly ran to the bus. The adrenaline rushing through his body was incredible. Before, he would have been completely scared to do this, but now? Now, he was damn excited to face the person who gave him his quirk. He was going to show him how powerful he had become, and he wouldn't show any mercy, just as Mirko taught him. The bus ride was very uncomfortable. Bakugo sat on the other side to be as far away from Izuku as possible. All Might suggested playing something to lighten the mood, but it didn't work. Bakugo was already scared that his disciple hadn't stopped smiling in that strange way. Finally, they arrived at the combat stage, a scaled-down city. All Might stood in front of both of them. All right, this is the stage where we'll fight, All Might said, smiling. You have 30 minutes to win. The conditions are 1, put these handcuffs on me. All Might gave 1 to each. Izuku stored it in one of the pockets of his new suit, they were quite useful. 2, either of you escapes from the city through the exit routes. Assume you're fighting against a villain much stronger than you. Trying to win is fine, but if you can't, use your wisdom and escape to seek help. Win by fighting or win by fleeing. Izuku muttered. I had the support department make this for me. The blonde pulled out some wristbands from his pocket and put them on. They weigh half of my weight, making it harder for me to move and reducing my strength. Wow, they're heavier than I thought. All this is to make us consider fighting. Are you underestimating us? Bakugo asked. Ha ha ha, who knows? The doors closed behind them. Izuku and Bakugo looked at the fake city for a second before the blonde started moving. Don't follow me. I'm going to knock out that muscle idiot. I'm not following you, we're just walking in the same direction, Izuku shrugged. Besides, you should avoid a fight. Neither you nor I are at All Might's level. I'll guide him around, make him spin around, and knock him out when he's tired. Do you think you can tire out the symbol of peace in 30 minutes? I don't think your butt can handle the beating he'll give you in that time, Izuku shook his head. Who do you think you are? Even if the chances were 99%, the idea of trying to knock him out and crack. Izuku was silenced when Bakugo punched him in the face, knocking him to the ground. The blonde looked at Izuku angrily as he touched the spot where he was hit. Not another word. Don't you dare underestimate me, or I'll. It happened too fast. Bakugo only saw a streak of green lightning, and then a punch hit his face, sending him to the ground. Bakugo touched the spot, his lip was bleeding. Hit me again, and I'll break your arm so much that you'll have to learn to pull explosions out of your ass just to keep being a hero student. Who the hell do you think you are? Do you think that just spending time with a heroine with a big ass puts you at my level? Don't you dare disrespect me, you son of a bitch. They couldn't continue their argument because a strong gust of wind interrupted them both. Izuku suddenly felt the air turn cold, and pressure filled the atmosphere. The green-haired boy slowly stood up, picking up a small stone from the ground. Collateral damage, who cares? A malicious smile covered All Might's face. If you're thinking of this as a test, then prepare to suffer. I am a villain against you heroes. Come at me with everything you've got. All Might fell silent and caught something that was about to hit his eye. Opening his hand, he saw it was a stone. It was only 3 seconds, but it was enough for Izuku to move at high speed and appear in front of the blonde, lifting his leg to kick. All Might raised his arm to cover his face, thinking that the kick was aimed at his face. However, Izuku lowered his leg at the last second, directing the kick to the left side of his abdomen, his wound. Smash! All Might felt a wave of pain through his body as Izuku hit his wound. The blonde spit out blood and hunched over. However, Izuku didn't give him time to react. He jumped, giving him a headbutt to the chin, lifting his head. I'm sorry, All Might. The green-haired boy spun in the air, delivering a kick directly to the blonde's face. But Izuku fell to the ground and propelled himself towards the blonde again, preparing to punch him in the stomach with his fist. I won't show mercy. But just as he was about to hit him, All Might caught his fist with his hand. Izuku felt all the adrenaline drain at that moment. All Might grabbed Izuku forcefully and threw him to the ground, putting him in a hold to immobilize him and hurt his arm at the same time. Is that all you've got? That tickled. Shiny. Bakugo jumped at All Might and attacked him with his explosions. However, the blonde passed through them and punched Bakugo in the stomach. All Might smiled at that, but he received a strong kick to the face. Izuku landed on his feet and launched himself at the blonde again. All Might tried to catch his punch, but Izuku passed by, positioning himself behind him. All Might turned around to grab him with his arms, but Izuku had jumped and then delivered a spinning kick to his head, Karate Kid style. The green-haired boy was about to attack the blonde again, but All Might grabbed his leg and threw him towards a building, making him crash against the wall. Then, he took a street railing and used it to keep Izuku attached to the wall, preventing him from escaping. All Might walked towards Bakugo, who was still recovering from the punch. The blonde watched as Bakugo breathed, trying to catch his breath. I understand now. Are you upset about young Midoriya's sudden growth? All Might stood in front of him. If you compare someone at level 1 with someone at level 50, the way they both progress won't be the same. What you're doing is a waste, kid. You can grow even more, but what you need to grow is not your strength, just like young Midoriya doesn't need his own strength to grow. Both of you need an external force. Bakugo growled as he slowly stood up, looking angrily at the blonde. Shut up, All Might. If I ever need to take that little and useless strength, it's better that I lose everything. All Might wore a serious look upon hearing the blonde's words. If that's how it is, you'll regret it sooner or later. Don't talk about what you don't know, sensei. All Might turned around upon hearing Izuku's voice, but it was too late. The kick had already hit his wound, making him hunch over in pain. If I realized anything these weeks. Izuku delivered a strong punch to the blonde's stomach and then used his fingers to poke his eyes, giving him enough time to kick his face again. Is that the only thing I don't need in my life is the support of that piece of shit? Izuku shouted, smiling savagely. I already found the true strength I needed to move forward. Izuku quickly grabbed Bakugo's arm, removing one of his bomb gloves in the process. Then, he threw the blonde towards All Might. Bakugo instinctively attacked All Might with his explosions, but they did nothing. All Might hit Bakugo, knocking him out of the way. Unfortunately, due to that, he didn't realize that Izuku had aimed and removed the ring from Bakugo's glove. The explosion hit All Might directly. All Might applauded to disperse the smoke. However, when he did, he saw how Izuku had jumped towards him with a double kick. The blonde crossed his arms in an X to defend himself. Seeing that, Izuku opened his legs and closed them tightly around All Might's arms, preventing them from separating. With a quick movement, he took the handcuffs from his pocket and placed them on All Might's arms. All Might went into shock when he heard the handcuffs click, unable to separate his arms. Izuku hung from them like a monkey, but his smile didn't disappear. Instead, it widened even more, and then he screamed with all his might. Villain captured, Izuku shouted in victory. Team number 2 has completed their exam. Hee hee. Ha ha ha, Izuku started laughing, not like a madman but like a child who had scored a perfect 10 on a math exam, full of joy, pride, and absolute satisfaction. Ha ha ha. I did it. Young Midoriya. All Might stared at his disciple, who was still hanging from his arms. This test was meant to help you and young Bakugo change for the better. But All Might observed how Bakugo was in shock, his gaze fixed on both of them. The boy didn't blink, didn't move. All Might could barely notice that he was breathing. Then, he compared his condition with that of his disciple, who was smiling and celebrating his victory, just like Bakugo did during the entrance exam, with a wild smile and a sense of pride and satisfaction. You've already changed, the blonde thought, astonished. All Might, Izuku lifted his body hanging from the symbol of peace's arms to look at him, as if doing sit-ups on a bar. If you don't mind, do you happen to have a phone with you? All Might blinked confused at that question. Rumi was bored. The albino was waiting to be attended to finally get her damn reports done. This was much easier when the kid was around, at least she could entertain herself then. Rumi was about to sigh in boredom when a message arrived on her phone. It was from an unknown contact and came with an attached file. Upon opening the message, she read the text. Hey Rumi. It's me, Izuku. Sorry to write to you from this number, but as you know, my phone is broken, hee hee. Well, no beating around the bush, guess who managed to win their exam? Rumi got excited and quickly opened the attached file. It was an image. In it, Izuku was hanging from All Might's arms, who was handcuffed. Izuku was smiling and making the peace sign at the camera, while All Might just smiled with a sweat drop on his neck. Behind them, a shocked blonde seemed to be struggling to process what was happening. Rumi's face exploded into an expression of joy, pride, and pure wildness. She tossed her papers in the air as she jumped around like an animated rabbit. That's my boy, damn it, she said, smiling with excitement and pride as she jumped. The exams finally ended. At this moment, Izuku didn't care about how his classmates did in the exam, he would find out tomorrow. Right now, he was tired because Recovery Girl used her quirk on him, and he just wanted to grab a bite to eat and watch a movie. I'd like to watch it with Rumi, thought Izuku, a slight smile on his face. It's fun to see her with them. When I see them with other people, they keep asking about everything that happens. Thanks to All Might, Izuku got permission to go home. All Might had said the boy needed rest, and since he wasn't too injured, it would be fine for him to leave. Besides, he wouldn't miss anything since the results would be announced tomorrow. As Izuku walked out of UA, approaching the door, he suddenly heard a sound. It was strange and getting louder every second and finally, he recognized it. Kid. Izuku quickly moved when something landed in front of him. He was surprised by what it was, but he didn't have time to think. Rumi took him in her arms and gave him a tight hug. You did it, you did it, you did it, she exclaimed with joy, shaking him from side to side. I'm so proud of you. Rumi-san. Izuku blushed at her closeness. What are you doing here? What do you mean, what am I doing here? I came to see my favorite student, she said with a smile. Yes, but where's your hero costume? Indeed, Mirko wasn't wearing her hero costume. She was in casual clothes, looking like a beautiful woman in her 20s, not the fierce hero Mirko. But for Izuku, she was the same. It was impossible not to recognize that smile. I left it at home. Now, let's celebrate your exam victory. She took his arm and started pulling him. Move, kid. We're going to have a great time tonight. Izuku blushed and let himself be guided by the heroine, feeling quite warm when she took his arm. Izuku and Rumi were arriving at a movie theater in Musetafu. The albino was determined to start the night with something simple but effective, a good movie. You choose, she said, smiling. Don't worry, I'll cover everything. It doesn't seem fair. Kid, my salary is more than your mother would make in a year. Just pick the movie. Okay. Izuku looked at the movie listings, noticing several good ones. But one in particular caught his attention, Interstellar. That one, Izuku pointed to the movie poster. Okay, take this, she handed him some bills. You buy the tickets while I get the food. Make sure it's the best quality. Izuku nodded and bought tickets for a 4K, 120 FPS, 4D screening, the best quality available. After buying both tickets and grabbing the 4D glasses, Izuku went to find Rumi, who had purchased the largest food combo. Don't you think it's too much? Nah, with my metabolism and training, I'll burn these calories in no time. Now, let's watch it. Izuku agreed and helped her carry the trays. When they reached the protected seating area, the green-haired boy and the albino sat in the back row, with a perfect view of the screen. There, they waited for the movie to begin. Rumi-san, Izuku saw the albino munching on her popcorn. Leave some for the movie. There will be some left. Fine, but don't complain later if you run out, Izuku said, rolling his eyes. Finally, the movie started. Izuku and Rumi put on their glasses and watched. Izuku was curious about the future depicted in the film. Imagine if that future really happens, Izuku said, munching on popcorn. If it happens, we'll surely solve it. We've already beaten quirks, after all. The movie continued. Izuku was intrigued by the gravity theme. How did they send coordinates to each other? While watching, he noticed a couple passionately kissing in the front row. He blushed and felt embarrassed, then glanced at Rumi for a moment. And looked away even more embarrassed. Izuku watched as the father said goodbye to his daughter to go into space. The boy couldn't help but shed a tear. Are you crying? Rumi asked, looking at him. It's just. I imagine myself with my mom. Someday it will happen, she said, watching the movie. When it does, it will motivate you to strive to win and come back safe. Izuku smiled at her words and continued watching the movie. Now, they arrived on a planet full of water, but due to the woman accompanying him, they wasted too much time. The protagonist saw in videotapes how his children grew up without him, to the point where they were his age or even older. Even Rumi couldn't help but cry at that scene. However, the sadness turned to anger when she saw the previously kissing couple now escalating things. Hey! The brunette suddenly shouted, grabbing everyone's attention. This is a cinema, not a damn motel. Let us watch the movie in peace, you filthy people. Guards escorted the heated couple out, and Rumi smiled satisfactorily. But when she was about to continue eating, she realized everything was gone, while Izuku hadn't even finished half of his food. Kid. I know what you're going to ask, and the answer is no. The movie continued, and now they reached another planet where a scientist had sent false data to get someone to rescue him. Please. No. Please. No. Please. Izuku sighed, took the hot dog he was eating, and offered it to Rumi. He knew that if he didn't give her something, it would continue throughout the rest of the movie. However, instead of taking it, she took a bite directly, brushing her teeth against Izuku's hand. Izuku blushed a bit at the touch. Finally, they reached the last act of the movie, and both Izuku and Rumi were blown away by the fourth-dimensional scene with the father. It was simply impressive. The movie ended with an open ending. Izuku and Rumi left the cinema with their brains in shock from what they had seen. That movie was incredible, Izuku murmured in amazement. Rumi simply nodded. After snapping out of their daze, they walked through the streets of Muzatafu, talking calmly. That movie was really amazing. I'd like to see it again, Izuku said, smiling. I'll watch it again some other day. Haha, it looks like you enjoy those kinds of movies, kid. Stop calling me a kid, Shorty. Don't call me Shorty. I won't call you Shorty if you don't call me a kid. TCH, fine. Izuku. She shrugged. Well, what else do you want to do? I'm really tired, I want to go home. He yawned. Well, let me escort you, she took him by the arm. It would be bad if someone tried to mug you without me around to save your butt. Hee, I think I'd be the one saving your butt. Ha! Don't get ahead of yourself, kid. I'm the strongest one here. Izuku was about to say something, but he tripped over a stone and almost fell. He managed to grab onto something in time to prevent a fall. The problem was that, in doing so, his hand gripped Rumi's hand, and now both were holding hands. Izuku felt his face turn red, but he couldn't bring himself to move his hand to let go of Rumi's. The albino didn't do anything to release herself either. Instead, she just kept walking while looking away. They continued walking through the chilly night, not letting go of each other's hands. Izuku had to admit that the brunette's hand felt very warm. In fact, not just her hand, Rumi's presence was quite warm. Even though he had gained more confidence in talking, thanks to her, he couldn't help but stutter and feel nervous when she made a joke or when they were very close. It was as if Rumi were the only one in the world for him. As for Rumi, she didn't understand why she wasn't letting go of the boy's hand, and she also didn't understand why she was blushing. Why was the hero Mirko nervous about holding a boy's hand? It was strange, and Rumi didn't know how to explain it. It was as if the boy's presence subdued her, as if his touch were enough to break through those firm barriers and bring out the tender side of her heart. She didn't understand this feeling, but she didn't hate it either. They were walking next to a garden near Izuku's apartment building. Izuku was surprised by how beautiful the flowers were, dark purple with white spots. Unconsciously, he caressed them as he walked and accidentally plucked one. Izuku felt guilty for taking a flower from someone else's garden, but he couldn't put it back. He lifted the flower and stared at it. It was truly beautiful. He noticed that Rumi was also staring at it. Seeing that Rumi was looking at the flower too, Izuku awkwardly smiled and, with a lot of nervousness, extended the flower towards her. She felt a warmth flood her face when the boy offered it to her. She took the flower and placed it in her hair, feeling that it would look beautiful there. Izuku thought she looked beautiful with the flower in her hair, it complemented her hair well. After that, they finally reached the door of Izuku's apartment building. Izuku let go of Rumi's hand, feeling as if he were detaching something stuck with glue. Izuku didn't understand where this flood of sensations was coming from, but he didn't dislike it at all. Well. Izuku looked at Rumi for a moment. Thanks for tonight. I had planned to do more, but I see you're really tired, she smiled. Maybe another day when I have free time, we could go out again. Rumi realized what she had just said, and a red color flooded her face. She tried to retract her words, but it was too late. I'd love that, Izuku said with a smile. Why is he so cute? She thought, seeing Izuku's smile. The green-haired boy felt as if time stood still for a moment. He felt as if his body moved on its own. When he regained control, he realized what he had done. He had given Mirko a kiss on the cheek. Izuku's face exploded in a red color, resembling a strawberry due to the enormous blush. Gee, good night. Izuku ran to his apartment without looking back because he was too embarrassed about what he had done. Silly kid, she murmured before turning around and walking away from the building. Why did that feel so good? She thought.